I'm going to show you how small, simple changes to your marketing and sales will explode your revenue.
I'm Spencer Powell, CEO at BuilderFunnel. We're on our way to generating $1 billion in revenue for our clients. Hit subscribe to follow along.
Today, we're going to use simple math to explode your remodeling sales. First, I'm going to show you an extremely simple way to track your entire sales and marketing funnel. There are only 5 key metrics that you need for this. First up is raw leads. This is anyone that you've captured information for. So this could come from somebody that filled out the contact form on your website, they called your business directly, you got a referral from a client via email, somebody did a text introduction. It could be any number of ways that you captured their information. This is important. We want to track everything. It doesn't matter if they're qualified or unqualified at this point, and we probably don't know the answer for all of them, but we have to capture the data. The second metric is phone pre-qualification calls. These are going to be the calls that you have before you book a first meeting, whether that first meeting is a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting at their home, or if you bring them into your office, but we want that phone pre-qualification stage tracked. The third metric that we're going to track is the first appointment. This is basically a qualified appointment. It could be Zoom, in person at their home, or at your office. It doesn't matter, but you've already pre-qualified them. So hopefully we've already pre-qualified for service area, project type, and budget before you have this meeting. The fourth metric that we're going to track is design agreements. So you've already had that first appointment, you've talked about their project, you've got budget out of the way, and now they're actually signing into design. So this is the first big conversion in the funnel because somebody has signed and money has exchanged hands. And the fifth metric is the construction agreement. They sign into construction and you're off to the races. To recap, you have 5 key metrics. Number 1, raw leads. Number 2 is phone pre-qualification calls. Third up is that first in-person appointment. Fourth is the design agreement. And fifth is the construction contract. From here, we're going to look at ratios. First up is booking rate. What we want to do is take the total number of phone pre-qualification calls and divide that into your total number of raw leads. This basically shows you how effective you are at converting leads into interested prospects. Now, if you do a great job at converting lots of top of funnel leads on your website, the booking rate will probably be lower. If almost all the leads you generate are just direct calls into the business, then this number will be a lot higher. Either way, we need to know the ratio. Next, we want to know the conversion from phone pre-qualification to first in-person appointment. Now this will tell us how effective marketing is doing at generating quality leads, but it will also tell us how effective the person that's taking those phone calls is at converting somebody into the next step. This number is critical because then basically you can figure out, hey, if your phone rings 10 times this week, you know exactly how many meetings you will set. Next up is the ratio between the in-person appointment and a design contract. This is going to give you a good indication of how well you're presenting in that first appointment. Ideally, you've already pre-qualified, so we know this person is in the right area, has the right budget, and they want to do a project that you want to take on, so this conversion rate should be fairly high. And if it's not, you know that this is a target area where you can make some small changes and have a massive impact on your conversion rate. And finally, we want to look at that ratio from design contract to construction contract. Typically, this conversion rate will be pretty high, 90% or more, and if it's not in that range, you know that there's some issues within that design phase that are causing hesitation from your prospects. Let's take a look at a sample of how this breaks down. Okay, so here's an example of how this all breaks down. We're going to start with 100 raw leads. And then from those raw leads, we're going to be able to book 80 phone pre-qualification calls. So that is an 80% conversion for our booking rate. And then from there, we're going to convert that to 56 in-person appointments. And that is a 70% conversion there. From those 56 appointments, we're going to see a conversion to 11 design agreements. And that is a 20% conversion. And then from there, we're going to move people into construction, so we're going to be left with 10 construction contracts. And that is a 90% conversion. Now, you may be thinking, holy cow, this is a lot of math. We're doing all of these conversion rates throughout this entire funnel, but it's pretty simple. It's adding, it's subtracting, it's dividing, and it's multiplying. Now, we can do some magic. But honestly, it's not really magic. We're just going to look at some targeted improvements. First of all, let's look at some observations. So one thing to note is that we close 10 contracts out of 100 raw leads. So we have a 10% conversion from raw lead to construction contract. So if nothing else changes, we can simply increase raw leads to increase sales. So if we can increase our marketing and get, say, 120 raw leads times 10%, we will be left with 10 contracts, 10 construction contracts. And so again, if we know these numbers throughout the funnel, then we can look at these levers. So one opportunity would just say, hey, we're going to keep all of these conversion rates the same. We simply just need more leads, more opportunities, and we will grow our business. Okay, next up, we can look at another opportunity. So we're looking for observations here. Where are opportunities for improvement? So if we look at this conversion rate right here, we see that that is pretty weak. From 56 in-person appointments, we're only moving 11 into design. And so that would be a huge opportunity for improvement. We might need to look at how are we running those in-person appointments? Are we running through the same agenda every single time? Are we looking for the real reason that somebody wants to do the project? Do we have a great presentation, great lead behind? I think we can move that up to, say, 30%. So if we increase this to 30%, we're going to be left with some new numbers. So again, let's walk through what this might look like. So let's look at this again, and let's take that increase in leads. So we went to 120 raw leads. Now from there, we're going to convert that same 80% booking rate, and that gives us 96 pre-qualification calls. Now we're going to move to those in-person appointments. Same conversion rate there, it was 70%. That's 67 in-person appointments. Okay, now we see this improvement. We've worked on that in-person meeting, we've worked on our agenda, our presentation, our sales skills throughout that process. And so now we are actually able to move this to 20 design agreements because we were able to increase that conversion rate. And then from 20 design agreements, we convert those into 16 construction contracts. And so at this point, we have seen a massive increase, right? We did a 20% increase in raw leads, and then we saw a 10% lift in our conversion rate from in-person appointments to design contracts. And so that went to 30% total right there. So after we see the 20% increase in raw leads, we see the lift in 10% to get this conversion to 30%, we're left with 16 construction contracts. And in the previous example, we had 10 construction contracts. So we were able to grow sales by 60% with two changes. So this number, 60%, we increased our raw leads 20%, made one improvement in the sales cycle, and we have 60% more sales. In addition, what we didn't look at is that I actually secretly decreased this conversion rate right here. This used to be 90%, but I changed it to 80%. You figure, hey, maybe you're booking a lot more people into design, and so this becomes a little bit of a bottleneck, and so you actually see a dip in this conversion rate. That would then unlock the next opportunity, but this 60% felt like a conservative increase based on adjusting these other two conversions up, and then we saw a decrease in this conversion rate here. But this is why I love business math. It's so powerful. But it's also pretty simple. So what are you going to do now? My hope is that you start gathering all of these numbers up. You can't make any improvements if you don't know what your current reality looks like. Don't exaggerate your numbers. Don't guess, don't fudge them. Use the accurate, real data. It might be painful, but just remember, if you have a really weak sales conversion rate in a couple of areas, then you know exactly what you need to do to improve, and you won't even need to increase your lead flow. Wherever the pain is, that becomes your focus. Once you've gathered up your numbers, look at the conversion rates throughout the entire funnel. Do you spot any problems? The most common problems that I see are usually in one of the two areas that we already talked about. Number one is not enough raw leads, and number two is a weak conversion from that first in-person appointment to a design agreement. That being said, you may be facing something different. Find the biggest constraint and unlock that to make the most progress in the shortest amount of time. But it doesn't stop there. Let's look at that example we used earlier. Let's say you grew your sales by 80% by growing leads 20% and increasing that conversion from in-person meeting to design agreement. Now that you've done that, you want to look at all those numbers again and find the next opportunity and repeat the cycle. Maybe you're at a spot where you're actually really happy with your sales conversion rates. It might just be time to increase lead flow. After you increase your leads again, you may notice that you see a drop in that phone pre-qualification call to in-person appointment. And maybe that's because you can't respond to all the leads as quickly as you were before. That becomes your new constraint. So you resource around lead response time, right? You put somebody on that to make sure that leads are getting followed up quickly and promptly, and that conversion rate starts to go up again. As you may be starting to see, it's a game of continuous improvement. You're looking at these conversion rates, making improvements, and then you'll see dips in other areas, so then you attack those new problems. I'm curious, what's your next move? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next time here on Builder Funnel TV.